Good evening, everyone. Today, we will be talking about gaslighting. Now, I know a lot of you probably know what this is. And if you do, I'm really keen to have these conversations, hear your shares, what has happened, whether it was probably the addict engaging in gaslighting behavior. And sometimes we can also get caught up in it as well. So let's dive into it. What is gaslighting, right? We hear this word, or we watch it on movies, and we're not really sure what it is all the time. But it is a manipulation tactic used to gain power, and it works too well. Gaslighting is a tactic in which a person or entity, in order to gain more power, makes a victim question their reality. I apologize for the dog in the background if it's distracting, but let's keep going. So we'll talk more about it. I'm sure a lot of examples will come up. But basically, it is just one way that an addict can manipulate loved ones. And addiction and gaslighting is the perfect match because it goes hand in hand with addictive behaviors, which is what we speak about when we talk about addiction as a behavioral disease. These are some of the things that come up. Individuals struggling with addiction really know that their actions are causing adverse effects on their lives and the lives of those around them. They know this to certain degrees. They know it with certain levels of denial in between, that they'll know it just enough that feels okay, and some of it they will just deny or ignore. The addiction will become the primary relationship in the person's life. As we all know, we've often referred to substances or the actual, maybe it's a secondary addiction, as a relationship, as a codependent relationship. And this is their main priority. Individuals suffering from addiction go to great lengths to maintain their habits. They will manipulate friends and family into believing that nothing is wrong when something is wrong. They use gaslighting to cause their loved ones to doubt their perceived reality and accept the alternate versions of the truth that they create in order to maintain their addiction. As we go further, it's something that comes up in terms of even in recovery, when their denial is so thick that they make you feel the crazy one, like the one who is seeing things, hearing things, not in reality, not in the real world. And this is a powerful tool that is used for manipulation. Okay, so there's some warning signs of gaslighting. I'm sure there are more. And I, like I said in the beginning, I really like us to maybe talk about some that maybe seem less blatant, as the first one shares, that maybe seem that it kind of goes under the radar. But gaslighting manifests in behaviors that either create or maintain an unequal power relationship to constantly put the victim in their place. Okay. So the first one, telling blatant lies. Walking in, you find your loved one either using, calling a dealer, behaving in the addict behaviors, acting out in some way. They tell a lie. I'm not doing that, or I wasn't doing that, or you're crazy. Say something along those lines. Okay. They deny they ever said something, even though you have proof. This has come up a lot. It's something that when you have seen these behaviors over and over again, you can almost piece the puzzle together. You can find these patterns and you start collecting proof. You start seeing evidence. There's messages, there's maybe CCTV, there's videos that end up going around. And the thing is that I know that you were using, I see it, but they will deny it outright. Okay. They use what is near and dear to you as ammunition. So this one is also a big one because this is where they fluctuate. It will say, but family is so important to us. We have to keep the family together. I can't go to long-term treatment. Or the business is so important. I have to work. Something that you is important to you, or those are just examples. I'm sure you guys have many other examples of this, but it's ammunition. It fuels it because it makes you feel, okay, maybe I'm being too harsh. Okay, maybe I'm the one that's in the wrong, putting you in your place. Okay, they wear you down over time. This one is a big one because you get tired. You get tired of the back and forth when it comes to lying, and when it comes to being endearing, being kind. That juxtaposition is exhausting to keep up with, to say the least. Their actions do not match their words. They'll say, "Oh, mom, I love you so much. You mean the world to me," and yet treat you badly, and yet lie to you, and yet whatever the case is, their actions cannot be congruent with what they're saying, what they say to you. I could, maybe going back to the first one, blatant lies. They are doing one thing and saying another. These are just some of the signs. Okay. They throw in positive reinforcement to confuse you. This is a big one. And I think this is something that, and it ties in with number 7 as well, the mood swings from overly friendly to rage, which is something that can happen. It's almost as though it's an abuse. It's an abusive relationship. And what happens is that they'll lie, they'll use your words against you, they'll do all of these things, and then they'll bring on the remorse or the crocodile tears or the all of a sudden doing nice things for you. But look, mom, I'm being helpful. But look, wife, this is what I'm doing. And it feels so real and it feels so genuine that you start to become confused. You start to become unsure of what is actually going on, of how bad the situation might be at that time. Okay. Calling you names, such as forgetful. Oh, but I did tell you that I was doing this. I told you I was going to stay out late. No, you didn't, but okay. Ugly. No, you're being ugly. You're being mean. You're stupid. Why don't you listen? You're crazy. They make you feel all of these things. And by saying all of this, it's confusing at some point, and by wearing you down, you start to believe this. You start to feel these things. And okay, shit, I am stupid. I am, there's different ways this becomes internalized for you. Okay. They try to align people against you. This happens a lot when it comes to parents, when it comes to family members who might have their own difficult dynamics to work around, pushing mom and dad against each other, the siblings. And it happens as well with friends, where it's us and them, and these are, playing good cop, bad cop against each other. But mom said this and she's allowed it, but then you find out that she hasn't. They play people against you as well, in terms of telling them that you're stupid, that you're crazy, that they get pulled in to the gaslighting. So yes, they're gaslighting them as well, in a sense. Okay, they tell you everyone else is a liar. So I've been hearing stories, heard that you were hanging around this dodgy crowd again. Your uncle saw you at this bar, but they're a liar. No, mom, it's wrong. Or dad, or wife, or husband. It's can't be real, because I was at a meeting. I was here. I was there. It's something that happens quite a lot. That as much as they're aligning people against you, they're aligning you against other people. Okay, but why would they lie about that? Okay, so those are just some of the warning signs, and the fact of the matter is that all of these things play into the larger scheme of manipulation to get what they want. If you start to stand your ground, if you start to hold the fort and say, I know that you're lying, and I know that I'm not stupid or crazy because I've seen this happen, or your uncle, whatever the example was, is that this is the case. yes, sometimes it ends ugly. Sometimes it ends with a lot of conflict. And I'm sure a lot of you also can relate to that. But did someone ask a question? No. Okay. But this, like I'm saying, this generally falls into manipulation. And what they're trying to do is use you as a hostage, take you hostage, take your feelings for them, your care for them, and use it as a transaction, use it to get what they still want, which might be to continue using, to be left alone in order to do that. Yeah, I just want to ask Chris if you have anything to add in terms of warning signs or manipulation in general, or is everything okay?
Yeah, thanks, Christianne. And I think, you, at times, the warning signs might not be so visible because, I mean, we're talking about your loved one whom you care so much, and the behaviors are there, but then you, because of the relation, the relationship that you have with that person, it's difficult to believe, to say, hey, but this could not be it, I could be wrong. So it seems at the end might seem as if you the one who's having these problems, you the one who's losing your mind, and those are, the characteristics of addiction, because now, the dishonesty, the lies, it could be something that you get to be in denial yourself about it, if that makes sense, Christian.
Absolutely. Couldn't have put it better. Thanks, Chris. And these are, as Chris mentioned, these are just some of the more obvious signs. But at the end of the day, you are still in a position of feeling confused. You are still, after all of this has happened and all of this abuse has happened, if we are honest, this is a form of emotional and psychological abuse, trying to make you feel like the one in the wrong. But you might not even see these because of how close you are, because of how much you want to put into their recovery, how much you want to make them okay. This might be something that you miss, and that is normal. But from here on out, in terms of learning about it and learning about where this might have happened for you, where you might have enabled some of this, even, with the mood swings, with letting stuff like this slide. This is where change can happen, in terms of picking up some of these signs, saying, okay, I'm not engaging with this because this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to gaslight me. Okay. So what can we do? Okay. We speak a lot on this platform also about conflict management, trying to not let this get to a place of conflict, but sometimes it does. And at the end of the day, with gaslighting, with any form of manipulation, we can't take responsibility for the other person's actions. As much as we say this to the addict as well, we're saying it to the families and the friends of addicted loved ones. The other person may claim you provoked the abuse. This happens a lot. If you avoid the actions that offended them in the past, the gaslighter will likely come up with new excuses for their behavior. So the more you try to maneuver around it, it almost doesn't work, because they'll find more excuses. They'll provoke a different aspect of what's going on. So you can't take responsibility for their actions. Don't sacrifice yourself to spare their feelings. And this is a really big one, because we tend to do that as the loved ones. We tend to say, but I'm not the addict and I'm better off and I need to be the big person here and let it slide, or, and at the end of the day, we're enabling a lot of the time. So even if you dedicate your whole life to making them happy, making them healthy, okay, functioning, you will never completely fill the other person's desire for control, because this becomes part of their addictive behavior. And I think I just want to pause there, because sometimes this is the part that's really difficult to understand. A lot of the time we think that the substance is the problem, the alcohol, the drugs, the what do we call it? A process addiction or a secondary addiction. We think that that is the issue. Once that's gone, they'll be fine. They'll be my husband again. They'll be, my child again, my mom again. And the problem is that the desire for control comes into addictive behavior. They want to control everything around them for them to get what they want. And you get sucked into that. And no matter how hard you try, you can't fill that desire for them to, their desire to control. You can't stop it from happening. You can't change it. So don't sacrifice yourself to spare their feelings. It's not about that at all. And the more you do that, the harder it will be for you to recover. Even when they're in recovery, or if they're doing well, the harder it will be for you to come to a place of acceptance, recovery, realizing and learning your own behaviors and denial along the way. People who gaslight others are often trying to fill a void in themselves. Okay. Because they, at some point, I think the first point covered this, is that they know the damage and maybe not the extent, but they know that this is not okay, but they don't want to change it. They want to keep using. So they're trying to fill a void in themselves, but they will not fix their heart by breaking yours, and they should not.
And just to add, Christianne,
Yeah,
if I may. Yeah, and I think maybe it's also important to note that now the perpetrator, or your loved one, they do have clear intentions. I mean, as you mentioned, Christian, that they want to control, they want to isolate, so that they keep getting what they want, and I think it is important to, like as you mentioned, that at times you end up questioning your sanity to say, am I the one who's not okay? And that is the intention of the perpetrator, because if you are aware of all these things, or if you are not isolated, they can you'll eventually get to realize and maybe establish boundaries to say no. So they keep on provoking or pushing so that they keep getting what they want.
Absolutely, Chris. And you get pulled into that cycle as the loved one, because you are part of their system, their support system, their relationships. As the loved one, you get pulled into that, because we often say, and we often use this term, but when you're in active addiction, you don't know how to be in a relationship. You don't know how to communicate, how to be there for someone else. Normally what we say is addicts take hostages. And at this point, and with gaslighting, that is what they're doing, is they're taking you hostage. They're making you the bad guy, the stupid one, the crazy one. Your sanity as part of, I mean, we talk about it, insanity and addiction and that connection, but you get pulled into that chaos. You get pulled into that insanity by questioning your own, by letting them make you question your own sanity and reality. Thanks, Chris. Remember your truth. And this is also hard. This takes different levels of help. I think sometimes if we're questioning our truth, how do we remember it? But just because the other person sounds sure of themselves doesn't mean that they are right, because this happens a lot of the time. They are so sure. I didn't say that to you. I know I didn't say that to you. I wouldn't say that to you, but you did. I know that you did. I was there, heard it. Someone else might have even heard it. That whatever that case, the blatant lies in that case is, just because they sound sure of themselves doesn't mean that they are right. The gaslighter may never see your side of the story. So I think this also comes back into how we aid that conflict when it's happening. We can try to say, no, but you did this, no, but you did this, instead of sort of stopping it exactly where it is, not engaging with this, or calling it out, calling it like it is. You're gaslighting me, I'm not engaging with this, and stopping it right there. Because in terms of effective communication, and we've spoken about this a lot as well in terms of conflict management, managing your expectations around a situation, you can't really, in that space where they're really convinced of their own stuff and trying to convince you of the same thing, you won't get any message across, and they might never see your side of the story. Yet their opinion does not define reality, nor does it define who you are as a person. So I think this also ties into not sacrificing yourself, not standing your ground, knowing what your boundaries are, what lines that you will not allow to be crossed. I think they can really, in terms of gaslighting, when I said calling you names, forgetful, etc., they can, I mean, those were just the surface level names. Character can be called into question, your person, and that is where a lot of conflict occurs. That is where a lot of hurtful things are shared and said. And I think it's important to have all of these boundaries when we talk about these situations. No, I'm not engaging with this. Moving on, either leave the room, whatever the case is. That needs to be a boundary that you're comfortable with. If that's a physical one, you're saying it, a verbal one. So it doesn't define you as a person. It's not your truth. It's not your reality. So it's just something to bear in mind, because this can happen anyway. This can happen in every aspect of life, because that's what addiction does. It absorbed itself into every aspect of life. When it comes to finances, this is something that comes up so much, because it's like, okay, this is what I'm willing to do. No, but you said, and no, but I need, and playing all sides of the coin, I guess. Where those are your boundaries. I know, as a person, as a loved one, as a mom, as a wife, as a husband, as a sister, that this is what my truth is, and nothing can shake that. To get to that point of being strong in yourself and standing firm and standing your ground does take a lot. It takes a lot more of these kind of groups, of Al-Anon and Al-Anon groups. It takes a support system of people who know that you're not alone, and of help if you need your own space, if you need something that makes you question your behaviors, your thoughts, if you realize, if you're listening to all of this and you're like, sure, this is something that I've been struggling with. I feel like I'm the crazy person. Then it's something to address when it comes to how to stand firm. How do I get to that point? Okay. All right, so more stuff to do. Do not argue on their terms. Back to conflict management. If the other person is fabricating facts, you are unlikely to have a productive discussion. You may spend all your energy debating what is real instead of making your point. The other person may use gaslighting techniques to declare they won an argument, but you do not have to accept conclusions based on a faulty premise. And they might say, end of discussion, and I'm sure you all have experiences with this in one way or another. It doesn't have to get to an aggressive space, but it is often very subtle, actually. This form of manipulation and emotional abuse, and making you question your reality and your sanity, is using these gaslighting techniques to put you in a position where you can't argue on their terms, and you shouldn't try. Prioritize your safety. Now, this is on the opposite end of the spectrum, where it could get aggressive, it could get violent. Gaslighting often makes targets doubt their own intuition. So if something does feel like it's getting heated, it's getting dangerous, maybe there's been substances involved, people are not in their right state of mind. So if you feel you are in danger, you can always leave the situation. And that's something that we are saying to do in terms of when it gets violent, when it gets aggressive. In the preamble, we speak about it's not helpful with emotional, physical, verbal abuse to ensue from any party, but leaving the situation sometimes is necessary. You do not need to prove a gaslighter's threats of violence, if they're sincere or not, before calling for help, asking for help. This is the first thing that we tell the addicts, ask for help. And it's the first thing that we tell you guys as well. Or if need be, the police. Okay. It is often safest to treat every threat as credible because there's been too many situations of violence. Okay. Sorry. Remember, you're not alone. You may find it helpful to talk about your experiences with others. Friends and family can offer emotional support and validation. This happens to everyone, with everyone. This is something that is very common when it comes to addiction, when it comes to active addiction and recovery. Sometimes you get pulled into it. You get pulled into a space of trying to gaslight someone else because of your loved one, saying, no, they're fine, or you being in your own denial about the situation. And you may find it very helpful to talk it through. You being gaslit is not something to be ashamed of. It's not something to say, oh my goodness, how could I not have seen this? How stupid could I be? Because that's exactly the position that they've tried to put you in. Feeling stupid, feeling crazy, feeling maybe I did forget what happened. Even though you know what happened, you know what they said, you know how things unfolded. And to share your experiences is something that we will always encourage. And I don't know, Chris, if you have anything to add.
Thanks, Christian. I think in terms of prioritizing one's safety and remembering that you are not alone. I think you made a very valid point. In terms of because here once you are noticing these like patterns, it is important to like participate in self-care activities, having passion, and I think also patience, because this is not something that will just go on at once. It will require you to gather yourself as well, and have people that are trusted within your cycle that you can always get to lean on, in terms of sharing your experiences. Yeah, so I think you've made a valid point there, Christian.
Awesome, Chris. Thank you. I think that is actually the end of our presentation today. I don't think that there is another slide.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Christian. So I've noticed we do have like 2 questions. Can I read them out to you?
Go for it. Let's see what.
Okay. So the first one, that is Lauren, eh? So it says, so does an addict believe their own lies, or they always aware of their deception? Okay, and the second one is, what if they just avoid any discussion, like saying, I'm busy, I have so much to do? Okay, so maybe okay, go for it, Christian.
No, what were you going to say?
Okay, so maybe in terms of the first question, what if they just avoid any discussion, like saying, I'm busy, I have so much to do? So that on its own as well can be gaslighting, because maybe you are establishing the discussion, or you want to have this discussion based on whatever that you've seen, something that you've noticed, and you feel you have to discuss that with them. And if they say like, I'm busy, I have so much to do, like, and you could see that maybe that is some form of manipulation, or to want you take responsibility for their actions, or to make decisions for themselves. That could be gaslighting as well, because if they are not shifting the responsibility towards you, and then they should make time for discussion, eh, Christian? I'm not sure if you want to add.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, absolutely, Chris. I think it's, it's almost putting you in a position. I'm trying to, make an image of it, but it's putting you in a position to say, okay, maybe I'm being dramatic about wanting to speak about this. Maybe I am, because I'm busy and I have so much to do. So they're putting you in a position where you feel like you're being overly sensitive about something. You're being crazy for bringing this up. You're being ugly or mean for bringing it up when they're so busy, and they want to avoid it. So the fact of the matter is that it's hard to deal with things like that because they do, and I completely relate to this one. It's they'll say end of discussion, or I'm busy, come on, can't you see that I'm doing something, or whatever it is that they're doing. And it's hard to almost know what to do in this position. It's like, okay, when can we speak about this, because this is important, or you're not busy, this is something that we need to address. Can I please have your full attention right now? It's something, your terms with your loved one, sometimes it's harder to get through to them. Sometimes it's, depending on how long they've been in recovery, maybe they're in primary right now, so it's a bit early to try and gauge that. But at the end of the day, it's what line you're willing to cross. If it's not that much of an issue, you could say, right, but when can, fine, you can go work, but when can we discuss this, because it's important. Or if it's much more important, you say, right, no, you have to stop what you're doing and we have to address it right now. Your boundaries and how you form them, that's where this becomes important. Okay.
Thanks,
First
Christian. So
something.
there's another question. Sorry for taking over there. So
No,
it says, so does an addict believe their own lies, or are they always aware of their deception? Um,
sure. I don't know if it's always. I think it depends. Hey, Chris, because sometimes I think we mentioned that when their denial is that thick, they do genuinely believe them. They do genuinely believe that they didn't come home that late, or they didn't take the car out when they weren't supposed to. They genuinely tell themselves this over and over again to solidify it in their mind. So I would say sometimes, but more often than not, they know that they're lying. They know that they're lying to get something out of it, because they don't want you to restrict their movements. They don't want you to restrict their independence and flexibility in order to go get their drugs. If you're lying, it's for a reason. It's for an outcome. It's for a result. So more often than not, they do know. And sometimes when they come in straight from active addiction, they come into primary, they are so absorbed into their own chaos and into their own lies that, yes, sometimes they still genuinely believe it. But hopefully through the work of that, and hearing your side of the story, that they come to understand that they've been lying through and through. I don't know, Chris, if
uh,
you agree or not.
yeah, yes, absolutely. I agree with you, Christian. So, like as you touched it on it, that so if it's about getting something from you, obviously they will be aware that they are deceiving you, but in terms of getting to protect their actions or their addiction,
Mm,
obviously they get to believe their lies, because that is the only protective arms that would make sense to them. It will give them more reasons to continue using, to justify their behaviors, even if they get to be challenged or reprimanded, or to take responsibility for their actions. If they believe their own lies, and then whatever that someone might say to them wouldn't make sense, because it could be, like as Christian mentioned, it could be the denial, you know. So it's difficult to dismantle that from a distance where it's your loved one, you know, and obviously you still want to maintain the relationship. So, but
Mm,
for them, obviously the deceive is there, and for a reason. You know, it's the same with lies, eh, Christian?
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that answers your questions, but we do have another. Not sure if it's a question, but I'll just read through.
Perfect. Thank you.
Um, okay, I am not married to my partner, and my own family wants me to leave them because of all the emotional manipulation from before they went to Changes. I have hope that Changes will change things, but how do I share heart with people who have valid points about their past behavior, but also have no understanding of addiction? I feel so conflicted.
Mm,
Mm.
That's so understandable because you're stuck in the middle of something that perhaps you're saying. So if I'm right in what I've heard, Chris, and understanding that there has been emotional abuse and manipulation from the
Mm.
addict from before they've come into rehab, and your family is perhaps trying to protect you, trying to um, put you in a different position than that person has. And at the end of the day, feeling conflicted and being in this position is completely understandable. It is such a hard position to be in. But if you say that are you saying that you don't have understanding of addiction? Or, Chris, maybe I
So,
understood.
no, the family, I'm assuming the
Right.
family doesn't have an understanding of addiction.
Mm.
Mm.
And you know what? I'm just going to normalize that for a second because many people don't have an understanding of addiction and what it does to relationships. Many people don't. They think it's a choice. They think this is what's happening. And a lot of the time it is, you feel the need to protect the addict by trying to maybe defend them, trying to explain addiction, trying to get your family around. The reality is that what, again, I think I'm going to use this answer, the previous answer for this as well, because what boundaries are you willing to put in, both with the addict and with your family? Because for you to be in a position where you are, maybe I'm getting the sense that you're trying to support this person and trying to work through things with them, support their recovery, but you are struggling with where your family is with that. What boundaries are you willing to put in? What boundaries are you willing to give your family in terms of, okay, this is what I've decided. I understand there's been abuse or manipulation before. I'm maybe in therapy for it. I'm going to support groups. I'm trying to get this help or hear other people's experiences of it. And to the addict, that this manipulation and abuse cannot keep happening. What boundaries are you willing to put in for that, in terms of, if this happens again, or if I see patterns of this again, I'll be gone. I will not be here. I don't know, Chris. I think it's a really difficult position to be in. What do you
Mm,
think?
yes, it is indeed, Christian, because you know, your family as well, they, like as you say, they got valid points. You know, this is their experience, and I
Mhm.
think we keep saying it, that addiction is a family disease. It doesn't just affect the addict or you as the partner. It gets to
Mhm.
affect at least 15 people,
At
and
least,
and
yeah.
and this is like some sort of concern, or you know, your family trying to be there, and I think it is also important to acknowledge that from your side, to say this
Mm,
is not some sort of attack or them wanting to control. Basically it's just looking up for you. But I think, as Christian mentioned, that at the end of the day, it's about a choice. It's a choice that you will have to make, to say, what are my boundaries, in case this happens again. What then, what is going to happen, you know? And because now you also need to be mindful about if this is like you protecting your partner, the
mm,
addict, because there's like a very thin line in between, because I mean you've experienced it, and someone can come back and say, hey, I'm willing to commit to the program, I'm willing to communicate, no more
Yeah.
lies. But if you just have to take that or their word on it and not the actions,
Mhm.
it's a choice that you'll have to make, to say, hey, I'm happy to continue with you, but these are my boundaries. And it's the same with your family members, because um, everyone is here now because of the addiction or the addict. You know, these are the experiences that you poured your heart to them before, to say, hey, I'm experiencing emotional manipulation. This is what is happening. That was prior to rehab, I understand. But now that maybe that's where your family is at the moment,
Mm.
Christian.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Mm, okay. So we also have another question here from Kovati. Eh? So it goes like this. What is your view about those in recovery living alone? How could that help them?
Okay.
Mm,
It's a
go for
difficult
it.
one. It's a
Mm,
difficult one because you can have problems living anywhere as an addict in recovery. Living with your family, they could be really tense dynamics. Um, Living alone brings a lot as well because you don't want them to isolate. You don't want them to not follow through with the things that they promised that they would. So this one is difficult in terms of your relationship with your loved one. If living alone means that they're alone 24/7, I'd be worried about that. I'd have a discussion with that perhaps maybe you live alone and you go to bed alone, or you eat dinner alone, whatever the case is. But how are you spending your time? I think that's maybe where your concern is coming from, perhaps. But you're saying, you said the second part of it was how could that help them? Um,
yes.
it could help them in terms of some gaining some kind of independence. Khobati, we also say that it's not the family's job to ensure that the addict is in their recovery program. The addict has to figure themselves out in that recovery space. What their day looks like, they have to take the initiative to go. A lot of the times, as the families or the loved ones, we feel like I have to make sure that they go to this meeting, they do this, they're doing their service, they follow up on their step work, and that's not your job. So living alone, yes, it comes with its own things, but so does living anyway for someone who's just come out of active addiction, and needs very a structured life. That's what we promote, especially in our early stages of trying to just build that foundation of recovery. So a structured life, but also if you're living alone, that might be your circumstance, but making and taking the initiative to connect to other people, to see other people in recovery, to spend time and rebuild relationships in the family that have probably been broken. um, I hope that answers you. I don't know, Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, thanks, Christian. So there's another question or message from, I think this is Ompile Mahome, and the previous one that you were answering is from Robert. So I think maybe it could be related. So the other one, it says, I feel that in our case, our loved one has tried to deny responsibility for almost everything in their life, living in the same home where he grew up in, where he doesn't have to cook, clean, or maintain himself. Um, maintain himself contributed to the problem. What view do you have on this? Could the environment be a big factor to the addiction, especially if they, let me just get to the last part, especially if the environment becomes toxic due to many factors? So I think this goes to the question that you were answering, Kristen, there, to say, living alone. So um, recovery, it's about, a new way of living. So it's about having to change the unhealthy patterns, taking responsibility for actions. Like, for instance, if living in the same home, so the person has been living in the same home where he doesn't have to cook or clean or maintain himself, you know,
Okay.
and if now living by themselves would assist in them taking care of themselves, or doing their house chores, because this is some of the things that we get to teach them in rehab, to clean after themselves, to do house chores, that's small patterns they get to contribute, and get to contribute so much in the recovery, so that they take responsibility for their actions. They are accountable. They get to be responsible. So, because addiction on its own doesn't just manifest in like 3 weeks, it takes ages, for manifestation. So the same would make sense for recovery. It takes time. So with these small contributions, it now gets to be healthy patterns, if I can put it that way.
Yes.
So depending on circumstances, living alone, but if that person is living alone but still attending meetings, with open communication with the loved ones, every now and then getting to interact with them. So if that helps, and then it is a good idea. But if now maybe it's too early days, and maybe living by themselves, it's a bit risky, then it's not advisable. So it is all dependent on the circumstances. Hey, Christian?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Chris, because at the end of the day, what might be ideal for someone else in their recovery, or the family, and what they would like might not be for someone else. And the reality is that we don't have the luxury of sometimes changing this. Sometimes the only place that the addict can go back to is that home, that family, that, meals are provided, this and this and this is sorted out. The problem is that in each space, in whatever circumstance that they might be coming from, and also going back into after rehab, after whatever treatment, secondary, tertiary, maybe they were in a halfway house, whatever's happening after that might be, it might look very similar to what they left when they came in. And the problem with this, not the problem, but the thing to do in this space is also to put in those boundaries there. Not just boundaries, but also new ways of living in the house. If the same behaviors continue, or if you feel like where he doesn't have to clean or cook or maintain himself has contributed to the problem, now he will have to do those things. Things will not just be handed to them on a silver platter anymore, or whatever the case is. Opposite to that, if they were living alone, now you won't be alone all the time. You will be out connecting to people, going to meetings. As a parent or as a loved one, I will be seeing you every day for dinner, whatever the case is. So things like that, if you feel a boundary needs to be put in, that part would be really important in trying to just ensure that their recovery is still structured, their life afterwards, like Chris said, we can't go into the same way of being that we were before we came into rehab, because that doesn't help, and it undoes a lot. Okay, I see
Thanks,
Mo's
Christian.
hand is up. Yes,
Yeah.
Mo,
Do you want
go.
to unmute yourself and go for it, Mel?
Hi, good evening. Sorry about my dog. Just first I'd like to say thank you very much for this presentation. I've never known what gaslighting is. I always thought it was like a term slang that teenagers use. So thank you so much. Just if I could just share, my son, because we don't live in South Africa. My son had to go we were fortunate because lockdown happened in South Africa and he was fixing to leave the halfway house. So we were able to use lockdowns and COVID as a reason to extend halfway. But eventually he had to go home on his own. But he went home and he had stuff going on. It's like he joined the Writers Guild. He volunteered twice a week at a school, and there was stuff going on. It didn't reduce my anxiety of him going back to the house that he came from, but it helped. And I checked in with him every single day. It's only this year I've reduced the phone calls. I phone him 3 times a week or something. I phoned him last night. But I did it. I WhatsApped him. We spoke on WhatsApp every single day when he first went home and he was on his own. For me, one of the hardest things about going home and being with him in the house was for me not to take over, because I was so used to doing just silly things like doing all the laundry and cooking and cleaning, cooking dinner every night and cleaning the kitchen. So I started thing was, one night he was on 100% kitchen duty, from food prep to eating to cleaning, and the next night was my turn. And there were a couple of nights he messed up, but I had to really, I actually just closed my bedroom door so that I didn't barge in and take over, because I was very keen to go in and say, okay, let's start peeling carrots and things. And that was very difficult for me not to step in and take over. And then the other big thing was not doing his laundry. If I needed something from him to make my load bigger, I would put it into the washing machine and then I would leave it on the side. I wouldn't hang it up or anything. That was just, I know it sounds minor, but for me personally, it was a big step after always doing things.
Absolutely, Mo. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Mel. Christianne, I think we do have a follow-up message from Lauren.
Okay.
So I'll just read that now. So from my experience, I feel that the addict truly believe that everyone is against them, and not just saying it to gain empathy, which makes it more difficult to disregard their feelings. I then get accused of always supporting the friends, colleagues, etc., instead of her. So this is like a follow-up statement that we read up there.
From Lauren, yeah. You know, Lauren, I think that the point is not to disregard their feelings. Just to try and address that part first, because we're not trying to disregard their feelings. We're not trying to make them feel like they are the crazy ones. We're not trying to do this in reverse. But the thing is that, yes, they do truly believe that everyone is against them, you know, especially very early on in recovery. They do. They think that the world is out to get them, and it's sometimes a pity party. It's sometimes, you know, woe is me. And that is often the case. And sometimes, yes, it is maybe not just to gain empathy. Sometimes it is. We can't always know what it is, you know, that is going on for them at that time. But I think the point is not to disregard their feelings. It's to have more effective communication in what is going on for them. You know, you say you get accused of always supporting the friends, the colleagues, you know, what is going on for them, and what do they feel you are doing or saying in supporting them, or that it's always the case that you're taking someone else's side. What is, you know, those kind of conversations need to be more I'm trying to think of a word, but specific, I think, in terms of, okay, firstly, what do you need from me? In this case, I ask that a lot, and I know people think it's weird, or maybe they don't know what they need from me, but in you venting to me right now, what do you need from me as mom, as wife, as whatever the case is? And then it's about, okay, if you're trying to get me to be honest with you or calling you out on something, then yes, maybe I think that you went wrong over here. But at the end of the day, I understand that it feels difficult. We're not disregarding their feelings at all. So I just wanted to address that part. But I really do understand that it's a difficult position to be in. Chris, I don't know what you think. We only have, I think we're done, but we'll wrap up now. Yeah.
Okay, maybe before wrapping up, let's just get to Hobati. What guidelines do you have for setting boundaries?
Okay.
Okay.
So Khobati, we have a beautiful presentation on boundaries, and I just hope that you keep coming because it is the hardest thing to do. And I know it's the answer that we've been giving for a lot of these things, but we will be doing another presentation on boundaries quite soon, but please keep coming back, and please ask your fellow loved ones of addicts. I think it's like what Merle was saying, sometimes I have to close the door to not go. Sometimes there's physical boundaries, sometimes there's close the door, put myself away because I know I can't trust myself with this. Verbal boundaries, this is something that I will not allow, or I will allow. And the important thing with boundaries is always the follow through. If a boundary has a consequence, that if I say you cannot be home after 8, if you are home after 8, this is what happens. I don't know, whatever the consequence that you want to put in. But please stay tuned. Please keep coming back. We have really great discussions on boundaries and a good presentation that'll take you through all of that.